A mother of two gunned down right outside her home, allegedly by her ex-boyfriend, had posted on Facebook just minutes before that he was stalking her. Her family says she did everything right, went to police, got a protective order, but her life was still taken. We are getting insight on how police can handle domestic violence situations that could turn deadly at any time with a former sheriff's deputy and SWAT officer. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. 34-year-old Mariah Samuels, known to many as just Raya, spent the last few hours of her life in fear. This was after she was allegedly targeted by her ex-boyfriend, 50-year-old David Eugene Wright. Samuel's body was found riddled with bullets just outside the home that she shared with her father out in Minneapolis, Minnesota on Sunday, September 14th. And as police started investigating who could have committed this brutal act, they discovered that Samuels herself had posted on Facebook just before she was shot some very alarming messages. She wrote at 7:45 a.m. Central Time, "I was trying to stay silent but stalking me at 4 in the bleeping morning, and the police ain't doing S or did a bleeping thing besides serve him a protective order, and clearly it's not doing bleep, bleep this." You can tell how frustrated Samuels is after a documented pattern of apparent abuse at the hands of Wright. Now, police believe she was then shot near her car just 8 minutes after posting that message. This is according to reporting from the Tri-City Herald. Samuels also posted footage before her death from a home security camera, which she says shows Wright hitting her multiple times. She wrote that Wright couldn't, quote, control his emotions, put his hands on her. She also claimed that he threatened her family, damaged her car because he couldn't handle a breakup. Remember, this is a 50-year-old man that we're talking about, okay? Now, to discuss what led up to this shooting, the response, what's going on behind the scenes, I want to bring in former sheriff's deputy and SWAT officer Chad Ayers on set. Chad, good to see you. Thanks so much for taking the time. Really appreciate it. I haven't seen you in a while. I'm sorry this is the case that we're talking about, but, you know, relationships involving domestic violence are topics we talk about a lot here. They're some of the most dangerous situations for everyone involved, the people, the police officers who have to try to de-escalate these situations. Talk to us about that.
Well, let's start with the law enforcement side for my background, and then I really do want to dive into this. It is. Domestic calls are the most volatile calls law enforcement goes on a daily basis. And that's why we're trained when we actually pull up on any type of call, especially domestic violence calls, we park, we don't pull straight up to the residence. We've seen plenty of law enforcement officers ambushed as soon as they get out of their patrol cars. Switching over to the domestic violence side, look, we have a serious issue across this country with domestic violence. And unfortunately, my home state of South Carolina is always one of the top leading places in the country where women are killed in a domestic type of relationship. It's mainly speaking to the ladies because, obviously most domestic violence includes, the woman being a victim. I understand men can be victims, but it's important for them to understand if you are living in an abusive relationship, you have to get out. It will never end, Jesse. It's called the cycle of violence. And so what happens is you start with this tension building stage, right? Where, you start dating and it's maybe some degrading comments or fingers in the face and then maybe a wrist grab. And then it turns into that volatile stage where that wrist grab turns into a punch. And then it'll swing back over to what we call that honeymoon phase. I'm so sorry. He's going to buy you some crumble cookies or a new purse. This will never happen again. It will never end. And so I think it's super important that your viewers and anyone listening today, there are resources out here to get them help. And so if we can, the national DV hotline is 1-800-799-7233. If you're living in this, please reach out and get help.
I appreciate you mentioning that. We're going to put it up there as well. And I want to go back to what happened here because it is, a unique case, but also not so unique when you look at situations like this. So I want to talk about Samuels here. According to a GoFundMe that was set up by her family, she was a mother of 2 boys. She worked as a dog groomer. Her social media is full of photos from trips that she's taken, including a recent vacation to Punta Cana. But back in Minneapolis, she was apparently dealing with a terrifying situation with her ex, David Wright, who family members say she dated for a few months before breaking up with him. Now, according to court documents that were reviewed by the Minnesota Star Tribune, Samuels had petitioned the court for an order of protection, an order for protection for herself and her 11-year-old son, which was granted. And that filing laid out serious accusations against Wright, including that he allegedly told her he was going to blow up her house. Now, Samuels claimed in the protective order request that on August 21st, Wright followed her to a home where she was dropping off her son, confronted her outside, pistol whipped her, and punched her. And the filing also noted that, according to the Tribune, that he allegedly grabbed her by the throat while still holding the gun and threatened to shoot her. So, Chad, when you listen to that, people will say, wait. Protective order, it's just a piece of paper. What can law enforcement do? Is there a way to really enforce that? Your take on it?
Yeah, so obviously protective orders, the great thing about protective orders is once it is obtained, it goes into NCIC, the National Crime Information Center database. So protective orders aren't just for you in your hometown, in your home state. They're nationwide. They can be enforced. So if for some reason the spouse and you or you move or you go on a vacation and this person comes out there, it can be enforced. But like with anything, Jesse, it is a piece of paper. And so there's not law enforcement with you 24/7. You know, as we look at this on a law enforcement side, we have a shortage of law enforcement across this country. But I do believe in a situation like we just saw with Samuels here, how horrific to know that she went through the process to put things in place to try to keep her safe. And unfortunately, the evil found a way to do it.
You know, I got to say, I have a demanding life as a reporter, a journalist, an anchor. I need fuel. I need fuel to keep my energy up throughout the day. But what do we see? A lot of these supplements and bars that are meant for on-the-go snacking, they're a mess. They have misleading labels. They have really complicated ingredients. That is why I'm so happy that we are partnering with Equip. With clean nutrition in mind, they are all about real food first. Transparent sourcing, third-party testing. There's no toxins or fillers sneaking in. Their Prime Bar, it's not just another protein bar. It is a grass-fed beef superfood bar that tastes like dessert. But instead of the junky syrups and the seed oils, Equip is built with real functional ingredients, like 20 grams of pasture-raised protein and dates and honey for natural sweetness. I keep a box on hand for when I need that, midday sweet fix, and you can too at equipfoods.com/sidebar. You guys are going to love how clean and delicious these bars are. They're going to be a household staple for you and your family. Equip, by the way, is giving my audience an incredible offer. You can hit the link right here or go directly to equipfoods.com/sidebar. Use my promo code sidebar. You will get 20% off of your first order or 35% off of your first subscription. So thank you to Equip for making the best bar on the market and partnering with us. I'm glad you mentioned the law enforcement shortage, because in an ideal world, should the system be improved where if somebody gets an order of protection, they get a 48 to 72 hour, not a protection detail, but police checking out their house, maybe following them a little bit. I'm talking about the people who take out the protective order, because I wonder, and you would know this better than me, in situations where that protective order is taken out, don't you see potential violations of that protective order, people maybe, confronting that person within a short period of time of that protective order, maybe not. But shouldn't that, in an ideal world, wouldn't that be great?
100%. And the frustrating thing on the law enforcement side is we actually see it more the other way, where the victim who pulls out the protection order after a few weeks starts to feel, maybe we can work this thing out.
Really?
I've seen a change in this person's life. Now, I cannot just invite that person over, all right? It still is a violation of that protection order. You have to go back to the courts to get it kind of squashed out or removed. But something needs to be in place, whether it is increased law enforcement presence, driving by the house, or even offering in the same sense, not that, anyone wants to uproot their own home or apartment to go somewhere, but putting them in a secured location or a shelter for same thing, 42, 72 hours, kind of let this thing die down. But unfortunately, we see this in any type of criminal activity. If someone determines that they want to commit some type of act of violence, they're going to do it. So, having more training, when this happens, of encouraging the victims to really be aware of their surroundings, before they walk outside, staying off social media, don't post where you're at. Look, I'm not making any excuses for this sick thing that happened, but again, understanding the seriousness of this, but even the private organizations, there's so many nonprofits out here for battered women. If we could somehow come up with a community program where armed security is available, so that's part of that nonprofit resource where that you actually have an armed security guard that maybe is in a plain clothes or in a regular car, not a patrol car, outside your house as a deterrent, to help keep you safe and to protect you some.
So this is something interesting too. The Tribune reports that Minneapolis police, they didn't forward the case to the DA, to the district attorney, because Samuels allegedly told officers she didn't want to pursue charges Now, you have a police spokesman who told the newspaper that a police liaison had actually reached out to Samuels and, quote, assisted her with the order for protection and talked about a safety plan. Now, that is interesting because when you think about that, the idea of pursuing a case without the cooperation of the alleged victim, you don't need the victim per se to press charges, right? It's really the prosecutor's decision if they want to pursue it, but you would need the cooperation of that victim in order to really get a successful case. So, I mean, that is a struggle here, right?
Again, going back to the cooperation aspect, in these type of intimate relationships, you know, so many times the victim does not want to cooperate. I am mandated by state law in South Carolina, if there is a victim who is in fear for their life or their safety or shows physical signs of abuse, I am mandated by state law to either obtain a warrant or make an arrest if the suspect is there. Yep. So again, I don't know all the legalities there. It's time law enforcement starts taking this a lot more serious though, across the country. Because when we don't take it serious, you know, or say it's just another domestic violence, I've already dealt with 5 of these today.
Yeah.
Every one of these are unique, and every one of these victims has lived through hell. And so we need to do our part. That's what we're called to do. That's our job, is to help people, and we've got to do a better job of doing that, Jesse.
Now, court records show that Wright did get a copy of this order of protection petition on August 29th, but what happened? So investigators believe that Wright confronted Samuels outside her home 2 weeks later as she got out of her SUV. Samuel's aunt, Caroline Brooks, told CBS News in Minneapolis, quote, he stalked and he searched and he looked and he's been around the block watching and he got her. And according to Samuel's sister, Samuels had been messaging her, saying that Wright was breaking the protective order by texting her. And now we know that Samuels is dead, right? Her body was found with these bullet wounds. The Tri-City Herald reports that she was shot 10 times. The Minnesota Star-Tribune says police found 15 discharged cartridge casings nearby. I mean, that says something, doesn't it, right? When you look at that evidence, that says something about this alleged attack.
Personal.
Yeah.
Right?
That's what it signals to you.
That's what it signals to me. Look, we saw this almost, that up-close gruesomeness, right? It's personal. That's, Jesse, we were talking, this almost, that violence reminds me almost of the Murdaugh case that we covered, you know. When people started floating this theory, this is just a random killing. No, we know that. Anytime that I see all these gruesome crime scenes where multiple rounds are just execution style, there's more to it than just some random drive-by. This was personal, and you know, I'm sure the investigators picked up on that very soon. Obviously, law enforcement had a pretty easy suspect to go after immediately. All you had to do was look at her last post. I mean, I still get chills after following this story and reading it, that just minutes after her posting, letting all her followers know, this guy's stalking me, he's following me, I'm scared, and then a few minutes later, she's dead.
According to a criminal complaint that was reviewed by the Tribune, you have a witness in a nearby home who told police that he looked out his window after hearing gunshots and screaming. He says he saw Samuels lying on the street, one leg partly inside an SUV. He says he saw someone removing things from inside the car, including a bicycle. You have another witness who apparently told officers that the shooter tried to pull Samuels all the way out, presumably to take the car himself, struggled to do it before taking off on this bicycle. Now, police reportedly reviewed nearby surveillance video and identified Wright as the gunman. He's facing second-degree murder and illegal firearm possession charges. Surveillance footage, potential witnesses, how key is that?
Huge. And if this thing goes to trial, let's be honest, juries want to see physical evidence. Circumstantial evidence, you have enough, it's great, but physical evidence in this day and age is what people want to see. They want to see Ring doorbells. They want to see and hear eyewitness testimony, and that neighbor is going to be key, turning to that jury and being able to point to the defendant sitting behind that table and say, this is who killed her.
And there's cameras everywhere. I don't think, I was just, we talked about the Charlie Kirk shooting as well. We've been focusing a lot about that here on Sidebar. I mean, surveillance footage, cameras, they're everywhere.
The day and age of getting away with any type of crime is over with. With today's technology, with camera system.
You hope so, at least.
Yeah. DNA, touch DNA. I mean, in the matter of several hours now, the resources are out there that if, I leave my hand on this table here and y'all collect the DNA, if anyone in my family had submitted to 23andMe or any of these genealogy testing, they're going to get a hit immediately. The Brian Goldberg case, prime example.
Yeah.
And so, yes, technology is key to law enforcement. Same thing with vehicle tracking and cell phone data.
Right.
It's hard to get away with crime this day and age.
Well, officers, they found Wright within 24 hours of this shooting. They booked him into jail. He's being held on a reported $1 million bond. In the Minnesota Star-Tribune article, reporter Paul Walsh wrote, under police questioning in jail, Wright said, "I'm not going to fight this situation. This is not going to be a hard-fought case." He also encouraged police to read text messages between him and Samuels so they would understand why he killed her. That's shocking, to say the least. If that
Almost like a sociopath.
What is it, like, I'm justified? I don't think that's a legal defense.
None.
But do you see that often after somebody allegedly commits a horrific crime? I'm just going to tell you what you need to know.
No, not at all. I think a lot of times it's something this horrific. Most times they just keep their mouth shut and rely on investigators in the district attorney's office to collect the evidence. Very rarely do you see this, much less justify the reasoning behind it.
So I want to talk about social media for a second too. Big role in this case. So both Samuels and Wright, they appeared to be active users, posting photos, status updates, but they had very different views on their relationship when you look at this. For example, Samuels wrote on August 24th, "I have shared my recent experience to empower others, regardless of gender, to prioritize their well-being and walk away at the first sign of trouble. Please remain vigilant and do not disregard red flags. I'm still learning to do this. It's never too late until it's too late. Stay blessed." Chilling to know that in just a few weeks she would be dead. But on Wright's Facebook and TikTok, he was sharing photos of himself with Samuels in what appeared to be a loving relationship, saying things like, "I miss this." Is that unusual to you?
No, I think that you've got someone that's manipulative and narcissistic, and so you can't justify or rationalize with these types of people. Look, I've been in a relationship with a narcissistic person in the past. You cannot rationalize with these individuals. They truly in their brains believe what they believe. And so hearing you read those text messages from Samuels is seriously one of the most chilling things I've ever heard. She's doing her part on social media, trying to help others who may be living in the type of situation she's in, just to know that in a few short weeks after this post, she's going to be brutally murdered.
And this is not the first time, by the way, that Mr. Wright has been accused of committing a violent crime. Let's talk about this, how Minnesota court records show that Wright's criminal history dates all the way back to 1992. This is when he was sentenced to 5 years in prison for armed robbery. Since then, his court record, it is littered with convictions, including disorderly conduct, contempt of court in March of 2008, assault in the 5th degree, and domestic violence in April 2010. And according to police, Wright was on supervised release at the time of the shooting after a conviction in 2009 for illegal gun possession. A case from just last year kind of gives us a look at Wright's way of interacting with people. In May of 2024, Wright was charged with assault inflicting bodily harm, disorderly conduct, particularly brawling or fighting, and damage to property. According to a statement of probable cause, Minneapolis police responded to a bus stop around 7 a.m. on May 16th. The document reads, victim TLB reported that he was at the bus stop when an individual later identified as David Eugene Wright and defendant herein was playing loud and offensive music. The victim asked defendant to please turn down the music or wear headphones. Defendant became angry and threatened that if the victim came back the next day, he would have his boys come after him. Defendant punched the left side of victim's face, causing his prescription eyeglasses to fall off and to drop his Starbucks hot chocolate. Defendant then deliberately crushed and stomped on the victim's prescription eyeglasses, totally damaging them. Now, Wright apparently pled guilty to the assault charge. The other charges were dropped. Chad, you look at that history, what does that tell you?
Makes me wonder why Wright is out walking the streets at all. Wright has shown that he cannot be placed in society without physically injuring, causing harm to people. Minneapolis needs to do a better job keeping violent criminals behind bars, because if they had done their job, this wouldn't have happened.
And police, there's only limited amount that can actually follow him.
Correct.
Right?
Correct. Yeah. I mean, this is a big city, and Wright's not the only person in this city that's out here doing this.
No.
You know, that's the frustrating part, and I get it. I get it from the the people's point of view. They want answers. Law enforcement, she posted this, the protection orders in place. What are you guys doing? And so I will go back. In a city like Minneapolis that has been very outspoken, on defunding law enforcement and things like this, when we start cutting the men and women in law enforcement that are out there to keep people safe, we're going to see an increase of these types of attacks.
And by the way, as law enforcement who has to track this suspect down, given that history, that's very concerning. How do you prepare for that?
Well, you know that he already has the propensity to commit violence.
Right.
We already know that he is armed with a firearm. So again, more than likely, I would not just send you and I or beat cops together and we find out where he's at. There's going to be preparation in place. What I'm going to do is once we figure out where he's at, I'm going to have a tactical unit there that has a little bit more expertise, more gear, training, and advanced weapons to take him into custody, I would say.
And as I mentioned, Samuel's family, they started a GoFundMe page in her memory. Let's talk about this. It says, "We are asking for your support to ensure Mariah's boys are cared for, protected, and given the stability they deserve. Any contribution, whether financial support, prayers, or simply sharing this message, will help shield them from the heavy weight of this world and keep Mariah's love alive in their lives." And this coming Saturday, family, friends, they're planning a walk in memory of Samuel's, ending at the local police precinct to bring awareness to her case. Really sad situation, but you hope it doesn't take something like this for people to get out of similar relationships, if these allegations are true, or to bring awareness, but unfortunately it does take something like this for there to be any kind of change. It's a really, really sad case.
It is, and we all have to do our part with friends and relatives just to encourage them. It's a hard discussion to have with people, but this is a prime example as to what happens sometimes when we unfortunately get mixed up with the wrong person to date or to hang out with. My heart goes out to her and those 2 little boys that she had.
Chad Ayers, good seeing you. Thanks for coming on. Appreciate it. Thank you. And that's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you should get your podcasts. You can follow me on X or Instagram. I'm Jesse Weber, and I'll see you next time.